Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Where would we be without you? The butchers, the bakers, the digital future makers. From BLTs to MOTs, you're the companies that keep us all going. So mind your business, London. And so will we, with our £14 billion lending fund to help small businesses. Because deal or no deal, from Downing Street to the High Street, every business is part of something far, far bigger. Find out how HSBC could help you at business.hsbc.uk/mindyourbusiness. All lending subject to status.
What if your email was organized by project and not by date? What if everyone looked at the same thing instead of their own inbox? Then it wouldn't be email at all. Forget your fragmented, jumbled inbox and make the change to channels in Slack. Spaces dedicated to individual projects, topics, or teams. All your communication is neatly organized and everyone is on the same page. Slack. Choose a better way to work. Get started at slack.com.
Ah, Christmas, a time for sharing gifts and laughter, and photos and videos. Make the most of it with a SIM-only deal packed with data from Tesco Mobile. Like a 10-gig SIM for just £13 a month. It's just one of the ways we're celebrating 100 years of great value. Go in store or search Tesco Mobile today. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Ends 29th of December. 12-month contract and unlocked 4G-enabled phone required. Terms apply. See tescomobile.com/terms.
Make their Christmas wishes come true. Whether they love Disney's Frozen 2, want to jet off on Barbie's Dream Plane, or ready up with the Fortnite Battle Royale collection. At littlewoods.com, you'll find all the toys they love, all with inclusive delivery and free returns. Own Christmas. Shop now at littlewoods.com.
From Bloomberg Television, here's Taylor Briggs.
It is a bad year for the global TV ad industry. TV ad sales fell almost 4% in 2019. That's the steepest drop since the recession a decade ago, signaling that advertisers are following viewers to the internet. But there are some winners emerging from this market change. Joining us to discuss, Dallas Lawrence, advisor at the marketing technology company Channel Factory in Los Angeles. Dallas, I wonder if we're not surprised the fact that we're migrating from TV to internet, but perhaps what's surprising is the rate of change at which TV advertising is really falling off a cliff.
I think what we're seeing is just the maturation of television advertising, as it's now, the dollars are now finally following the consumer eyeballs as they migrate away from linear television to really streaming television. What we know today is that 6 out of 10 U.S. adults stream, and they stream a lot. The average streamer watches twice as much streaming content as they do linear television content. And that doesn't even take into account the 42% of U.S. adults that say they either are going to cut the cord or have already. So the real challenge for marketers who still spend 95% of their TV budgets in these linear television channels is beginning to become very aware as those dollars are now moving to where the streamers are going. And there's going to be some winners and losers.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app. Or check your local cable listings. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. It is 6:17 on Wall Street, and this update is brought to you by Stevens Institute of Technology, ranked highest in the New York metro area for online graduate business programs by U.S. News and World Report. A Stevens graduate finance degree will position you for what's next. Stevens.edu/finance. Bloomberg Daybreak is out on customer terminals, bringing you all the news you need to start your day. Let's get a check of the latest headlines with Hannah George at the Bloomberg Daybreak desk. Good morning, Hannah.
Good morning, Karen. The FX swap market may have the worst year end in recent memory. Markets aren't pricing it. That's according to Credit Suisse, which says if the Fed loses control of overnight rates, it may encourage foreign central banks to use FX swap lines. 10-year bond yields in Japan hit 0% overnight for the first time since March. It's a welcome move for the Bank of Japan, indicating its massive easing program is sustainable. Inflation in China picked up to 4.5% in November, while factory gate prices fell 1.4%. Bloomberg Economics says neither measure is likely to alter the PBOC's easing stance. And President Trump learns what charges he'll face today. Sources say House Democrats are set to reveal 2 articles of impeachment, one on abuse of power and the other on obstruction of Congress. For all the news you need to start your day, check out Daybreak on your mobile phone on the Bloomberg Anywhere app. Karen.
All right, Hannah, thank you. S&P futures down 11 points. Dow futures down 108. NASDAQ futures down 33. The DAX in Germany's down 1 1/3%. 10-year Treasury up 4/32. Yield 1.80%, and the yield on the 2-year 1.59%. NYMEX crude oil is down 0.2% or 13 cents at $58.89 a barrel. And COMEX gold is up 1/3% or $4.80 at $14.6970 an ounce. The euro 1.1083 against the dollar. The yen 108.57. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's John Tucker with more on what's going on around the world. John.
Yeah, good morning, Karen. And as the House Democrats plan to unveil those 2 articles of impeachment against President Trump, a news conference is set for 9 a.m. in Washington, and Bloomberg Radio will carry that live. President Trump's administration plans to sign off on adjustments to a free trade deal with Mexico and Canada today. And the Justice Department's internal watchdog says, despite mistakes, the FBI was justified in opening its investigation into ties between the Trump presidential campaign and Russia and did not act with political bias. Sports, the Giants blow their 14-point second-half lead and lose to the Eagles in overtime 23-17 for their 9th straight loss. On the ice, the Islanders win. The Bruins and Capitals lose. In basketball, the Celtics win. The Warriors lose. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm John Tucker, and this is Bloomberg. Nathan.
Okay, John, thank you. It's 6:20 on Wall Street, live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios. This is Bloomberg Daybreak. So many potential market catalysts this week, so little time, but let's bring in Bloomberg News FX and rate strategist Richard Jones to break down some of what could move the markets this week, particularly, Richard, as we get closer to that Sunday deadline for new tariffs on Chinese goods. And it's interesting, we heard from the Agriculture Secretary, Sonny Perdue, saying he expects a pullback from those tariffs. This morning, we're seeing a pullback in equities and bond yields. How do you explain that?
Well, good morning, Nathan. I think you're right to highlight in the absolute plethora of market-moving event risks over the next few days, the Sunday deadline for tariffs as being really the key one here. And I think the Agriculture Secretary's view is pretty much the market's view. I think that the main base case is that there will be no new tariffs applied on Chinese goods, and that we will get a phase 1 deal agreed, and we won't get an immediate intensification of the trade war. And that's why I think equities have done so well in recent weeks, and I think why we see yields considerably off the lows that we saw in September. Now, what's driving the price action today? I think that ahead of all this event risk, and we talk about the Fed, we talk about the ECB, the Sunday deadline, I think we're going to get some position squaring and even just some adjustments going on that way. I think that in the case of equities, we've been on such a good run that maybe there is some profit taking, people taking risk off the table ahead of this not inconsiderable event risk that's coming in the next few days.
So are you thinking that we could see a further drop to bond yields as we get closer to the Fed rate decision and the potential outlook from the Fed for 2020?
I think for the Fed, they're going to play it pretty safe in terms of their messaging this week. Obviously, they're not going to do anything. There's nothing priced, nothing expected. But I think in terms of messaging, I think that they're going to continue with what they've been saying in recent weeks, which is to say that they're on hold. They're sort of in a reflective mood right now. They're watching the data. They think the economy's in a very good place at the moment, but that there are some downside risks. And I think a lot will depend on what is decided in terms of trade by the 15th of December. And then I think what that means is not just for the Fed, but also for other central banks. They come into play more as we get into 2020 once we know what the lay of the land is on trade. Because right now, there's still a lot of uncertainty. And as I say, I don't think there's any belief that we're going to get additional tariffs and an intensification of the trade war. But until we actually get something signed and announced, there is that risk present. And I think that's going to keep the Fed with its messaging quite constant to what we've seen already.
And in terms of currency action this morning, we're seeing a little bit more dollar weakness and the pound breaking through an 8-month resistance level. Do you see further upside for sterling as we get closer to the election?
Well, I think that what we're seeing now in sterling is very much the type of rally that I would have expected to see after the result of the election. That's to say, the Conservatives get a majority, which allows them to pass the Brexit withdrawal agreement, therefore removing that level of uncertainty, and therefore the market could then start to be a little bit more concerned or look more long-term at the transition time period that's between the sort of the 31st of January Brexit deadline and the actual end of the transition period at the end of next year. So what we're seeing right now, I think, is the market getting a little bit ahead of itself, already pricing in the Conservative victory and the passage of the withdrawal agreement. And so as a result, I think what we're seeing is we're actually seeing a setup of what I would call is your classic buy the rumor, sell the fact price action. So everybody is buying the rumor. Once that fact is confirmed on Thursday and into Friday morning, then I think we see some profit taking, reversing some of the move that we've seen in sterling. And then longer term, I think there still are a lot of headwinds for the pound, because I think passing the withdrawal agreement is just the first phase of many, many things that need to be done by the end of next year in order to get more Brexit uncertainty off the table.
Richard, thank you as always. Richard Jones, a Bloomberg News FX and rates strategist, and you can read more from Richard and the Markets Live team. Just type MLIV GO on the Bloomberg terminal. S&P futures lower by almost 12 points now. Dow futures down 121 and NASDAQ futures loss of 35 points. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
This is a Bloomberg Market Minute. Wall Street looks headed for a lower open this morning. Dow futures down 95 points. U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer and others from the White House headed to Mexico today. Bloomberg reports that a tentative deal has been reached on NAFTA, a revised version of the North American Free Trade Agreement between the U.S., Mexico, and Canada. Meanwhile, that December 15th deadline on imposing U.S. tariffs on Chinese goods is getting closer and closer. Stocks slipped to start the week on Wall Street. The Dow is down 105 points. We'll see if investors bite after the online pet supply retailer Chewy issued some guidance and its third quarter sales, which both beat analyst estimates. A loss in the latest quarter was still much better than estimated, and small business optimism improved in November and came in better than expected in a new report from the National Federation of Independent Business. Gina Cervetti, Bloomberg Radio.
Startups and research universities like New Jersey Institute of Technology are fueling the innovation economy. And few people are better positioned to see what's on the horizon in New Jersey than physicist and state representative Andrew Zwicker.
How technology is transforming our financial sector is revolutionary, and so much of that is in New Jersey. We are innovators when it comes to agriculture, and there is opportunity now for great transformation in how are we going to grow food in an ever-growing population, and how do we turn urban centers into agricultural centers. Autonomous vehicles is another one where we have some of the world's leading experts, and how this will transform how those who are either elderly or are visually impaired or mobilely impaired can start to use autonomous vehicles to transform their lives and have access to transportation they could have never had before.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu/research.
Sometimes in business, you have to take risks, but trading across borders and currencies shouldn't be one of them. With Western Union Business Solutions, we can help you manage the risk of doing business internationally. Our valuable experience, expert knowledge, and extensive global network makes us the ideal trusted partner for your business. And with our customer-focused support team, you'll receive a dedicated solution and personalized service. Visit westernunionbusiness.com. Western Union Business Solutions, a global financial network you can trust.
The S in Audi S-Line stands for many things like sporty, stylish, streamlined, and now seductively priced. Like the new Audi A4 S-Line, which you can now have from £359 per month, £2,154 initial rental. Test drive one at your local Audi centre, but you'll have to be swift. The offer ends soon. Search Audi S-Line. Audi, Vorsprung durch Technik. With 48-month contract hire, 10,000 miles per annum, 18s and over, subject to status, damage charges may apply, no ownership. Ordered by 31st of December 2019 from participating centres. Audi Financial Services, visit audi.co.uk.
Ah, Christmas. A time for celebrating, unwrapping and unwinding. Capture every moment with an epic iPhone 6S with a 12-megapixel camera. Now only $12.99 a month from Tesco Mobile, saving you £72. It's just one of the ways we're celebrating 100 years of great value. Go in store or search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Saving £2 per month over 36 months was £14.99. 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements required. Subject to status. Terms apply. See tescomobile.com/terms.
Cutting for the hit. Scores! On the goal line, Marchand scores!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
And tucks it home!
And with this team, it's really fun to be a part of a team like that.
You can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium. From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today. In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
Want TuneIn to remind you when the big NFL game is about to get underway? Be sure notifications are allowed on your phone and search NFL on the TuneIn app. Find the game you want to hear under events and tap Notify Me. We'll let you know exactly when it's time to listen in for kickoff.
From the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York, Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston, Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco, Bloomberg 960 to the country, Sirius XM Channel 119, and around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
It's 6:30 on Wall Street. Good morning. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. We are just about 3 hours away from the opening of U.S. trading. Let's get you up to date on the news you need to know at this hour. Stocks around the world are lower as markets wait for signs of progress on U.S.-China trade talks. Increased tariffs on Chinese goods go into effect 5 days from now, a time running out to reach an agreement that would avoid those levies. Here with more on what we know right now is Bloomberg's Tom Busby.
U.S. Agriculture Secretary Sonny Perdue is providing some optimism, saying he doesn't think the White House will impose extra tariffs on Sunday. Meanwhile, President Trump offered only this when asked about the matter.
China's having a very hard time. We're doing well with China in our trade deal, but they're having a tremendously difficult time.
The tariff set for Sunday would hit items including toys, laptops, and smartphones. I'm Tom Busby, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Thank you, Tom. Meantime, in China, consumer inflation accelerated to a 7-year high in November. The consumer price index rose 4.5% from a year earlier.
In Europe, the UK economy unexpectedly stagnated in October, marking 3 straight months without growth. Gross domestic product was unchanged following 2 consecutive months of decline.
In Germany, Deutsche Bank is warning its midterm profitability goal now appears more ambitious given the outlook for interest rates. CEO Christian Saving spoke with us at the bank's Investor Day in Frankfurt.
We can achieve, despite these challenges, our 8% return on equity in 2022. Therefore, we are confident that we can achieve that, recognizing clearly the challenges, but with the track record we have seen no reason to adjust.
And shares of Deutsche Bank are extending losses now. They're down nearly 2%.
Shares of UK apparel chain Ted Baker are down 14%. The company's chairman and interim CEO resigned as the fallout spread from a scandal over its founder's workplace behavior.
And the Mexican peso is strengthening on growing optimism that approval is close for USMCA. The Washington Post reports the trilateral trade accord to replace NAFTA has gained key support from the president of the AFL-CIO.
And now let's get you up to date on how stocks are faring. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day. On Bloomberg, S&P futures are now down 14 points. Dow futures down 144 and NASDAQ futures down 46. The DAX in Germany is down 1.6%. 10-year Treasury up 5/32, yield 1.8%. Yield on the 2-year 1.59%. NYMEX crude oil is down 0.6% or 35 cents at $58.67 a barrel. And COMEX gold is up 0.4% or $6.30 at $14.71 1.120 an ounce. The euro 1.1083 against the dollar. The British pound 1.3181, and the yen is at 108.55. And straight ahead, we have the latest world and national news. And this is Bloomberg.
Thanks, Karen. 6:33 on Wall Street, and this news update is brought to you by Anshin, an accounting and advisory firm providing unparalleled partner attention and specialized advice on tax benefits to help your business. Let Anshin guide you. Visit Anshin.com. Here's John Tucker.
And Nathan, House Democrats are poised to unveil 2 articles of impeachment against President Trump this morning at 9 in Washington. They're expected to put forward one charge against the president of abuse of power and another of obstruction of Congress. In the impeachment proceedings Monday, the House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jerry Nadler said several things are known with certainty.
We know that the president was at the center of a scheme to pressure Ukraine to announce an investigation of the president's political rivals. He applied that pressure by withholding both a White House meeting and vital military aid.
The Judiciary Committee Republican counsel Steve Castor reiterated one of the chief defenses of the president that's been put forward by Trump allies. The impeachment inquiry's record is riddled with hearsay, presumptions, and speculation. Bloomberg Radio will carry today's 9 a.m. news conference live. President Trump will face a more assertive Congress on foreign policy as he fights off impeachment and seeks re-election, with lawmakers pushing legislation at odds with his priorities and personal style on the global stage. This will be on full display tomorrow when the Republican-led Senate Foreign Relations Committee considers sanctions on Turkey and Russia, both countries that the president has tried to court despite Congress's wariness. In France, President Emmanuel Macron is bracing for a second day of protests over his plan to upend the country's pension system. And Bloomberg's James Regan has more from Paris.
Disruption is expected to flights, rail services and public transport, as well as schools and hospitals, as people join in strike action. Prime Minister Edouard Philippe is due to appear on French television on Wednesday to put the government's case for the need for pension reforms. In Paris, James Regan, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Australia's Prime Minister says 11 Australians remain unaccounted for and 13 have been hospitalized after a New Zealand volcano eruption. Prime Minister Scott Morrison says 3 Australians are suspected to be among the initial 5 confirmed dead. Australians were the largest group that were exploring White Island when it erupted on Monday. And platinum and gold mines in South Africa stopped operations. This as the country was hit by record levels of rolling blackouts that are crippling key parts of the economy there, threatening another recession. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm John Tucker, and this is Bloomberg. Nathan.
All right, John, thank you. It's coming up to 6:36 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update with John Stashower.
Eighth Monday Night Football went to overtime in the rain in Philadelphia. The Giants owned the first half. 2 Eli Manning touchdown passes to rookie Darius Slayton, a 2-touchdown lead. And Eagles fans who, yes, once famously booed Santa Claus, booed the team that just 2 years ago won the Super Bowl. But Eli and the Giants did nothing on offense after halftime. Eagles finally caught up. They won 23-17 on a Carson Wentz TD pass to Zach Ertz. Those two hooked up for the tying score with 2 minutes left. In the second half in OT, the Eagles had 18 first downs. The Giants had 2. Philly had twice the possession time. Wentz was 33 of 50, 325 yards. Eli in his first game in nearly 3 months, 15 of 30 for just over 200 yards.
That's why you practice and play, is to go out there and compete on Sundays. So obviously would have liked to got the win. I thought we had a great first half and gave ourselves a chance. And second half offense, we just did not do hardly anything. So put our defense in a bind. They're on the field too long, and we got to find we got to score some points in the second half.
Eagles end a 3-game losing streak, move into a tie for first. The second 9-game losing streak in the Giants' 94-year history. They were 0-9 in 1976. They've lost 8 straight in Philly. World Series MVP Steven Strasburg staying with the Nationals. He'll make $35 million a year for the next 7 years. Yankees have met with him. They're focused now on trying to sign Garrett Cole, who's 2 years younger. He figures to make even more. 20th win of the year for the Islanders, 5-1 at Tampa Bay. Oklahoma quarterbacks have won the last 2 Heisman Trophy, and Sooners QB Jalen Hurts a finalist this year, but the favorite is LSU's Joe Burrow. They'll hand out the Heisman Saturday in New York. With a Bloomberg NBC Sports Update, I'm John Stashower. Nathan?
Thanks, John. 6:37 on Wall Street. And today on the economic front, the government issues revised data on third quarter productivity. Economists anticipate a lackluster showing. Let's get more now from Bloomberg's Vinny Del Giudice.
The preliminary report heralded the first decline in almost 4 years, coinciding with a mid-year slowdown in economic growth and a pickup in labor costs. Productivity is a measure of worker output per hour, and the government's data have been subpar since the economic expansion began in 2009. A lot depends on business investment, which is zigzagged over the past decade. Vinny Del Giudice, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, thank you, Vinny. It is 6:38 on Wall Street.
The following commentary is from Bloomberg Opinion.
I'm Liam Denning, a columnist for Bloomberg Opinion. The biggest IPO ever is finally here, with Saudi Aramco debuting at a $1.7 trillion valuation. For some, though, that isn't enough. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman wanted $2 trillion, and his half-brother, the energy minister, says Aramco will get there soon. Higher oil prices would help, but OPEC is having a tough time getting them. Even if it did, that could give US shale producers a shot in the arm. The real support for Aramco's valuation is something real estate brokers know well: location. The IPO ended up being a largely domestic affair, where Aramco enjoys a more gentle cost of capital. On that basis, even if we do see $2 trillion soon, it may not mean very much. I'm Liam Denning. For more opinion, please go to Bloomberg.com/opinion or OPIN Go on the Bloomberg terminal.
This has been Bloomberg Opinion.
You can hear Bloomberg Opinion commentaries every weekday at this time. Terminal customers can read more at OPIN Go. It is 6:39 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg Green Report. Here's Jeff Bellinger.
There is a new call for governments around the world to do more to combat climate change. More than 600 institutional investors, including the California Public Employees Retirement System, Aviva of Britain, and Zurich Insurance Group are demanding, among other things, an end to thermal coal power plants worldwide, the introduction of a meaningful price on carbon, and an end to fossil fuel subsidies. This is not the first time investment companies have issued appeals on climate change, but this is the biggest thus far. The firms hope their clout will bring some results. As of last year, the assets held by the companies topped the combined gross domestic products of the United States and China. A separate report from CDP, a nonprofit based in London, says major companies such as Walmart and Samsung would make a significant reduction in carbon dioxide emissions if they shifted a fifth of their energy purchases to renewable sources. And that's the Bloomberg Green Business Report. I'm Jeff Bellinger.
All right, Jeff, thanks. Some other stories we're watching. A court filing shedding new light on the painkiller OxyContin and its maker, Purdue Pharma. Company files show it knew cutting its sales force would not kill OxyContin sales. Filing was part of Purdue's bankruptcy case. And Starbucks CEO Kevin Johnson could be in for a big payday 3 years from now. The company's board has granted him a special award that could pay as much as $50 million in cash if Starbucks stock return for the 3 years ending in September 2022 exceeds at least 80% of the S&P 500.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong.
Yes, but who has the power to stop this? You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fairhousing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's environment of market volatility, Pershing's Prime Services is well positioned to support the needs of hedge funds and other alternative investment managers. Whether it's customized financing or securities lending solutions, platform access, or business expansion, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and agile enough to meet meet your evolving demands. Pershing helps to solve the needs of clients by advocating for them, providing unwavering strength, deep supply, and award-winning service that is at the core of everything we do. Find out what sets Pershing's prime brokerage team apart.
Learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers offered by BNY Mellon's Pershing. Visit our website at Pershing.com. Pershing LLC, member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Sometimes in business, you have to take risks, but trading across borders and currencies shouldn't be one of them. With Western Union Business Solutions, we can help you manage the risk of doing business internationally. Our valuable experience, expert knowledge, and extensive global network makes us the ideal trusted partner for your business. And with our customer-focused support team, you'll receive a dedicated solution and personalized service. Visit westernunionbusiness.com. Western Union Business Solutions, a global financial network you can trust.
For the independent bookseller who found you that first edition.
For the baker who brings the smell of freshly baked bread to your door.
And for the barista who never needs to ask your name.
We've all got a part to play.
Every little tap keeps your high street alive.
And helps your communities thrive.
So if you love where you live, shop small.
Shopping on your local high street can make a big difference. Shop small. Only by American Express.
Christmas. A time for celebrating, unwrapping, and unwinding. Capture every moment with an epic iPhone 6S with a 12-megapixel camera. Now only $12.99 a month from Tesco Mobile, saving you £72. It's just one of the ways we're celebrating 100 years of great value. Go in store or search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Saving £2 per month over 36 months was £14.99. 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements required. Subject to status. Terms apply. See tescomobile.com/terms.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? We've got you covered. With TuneIn Premium, you can listen to every NFL game live as it's happening.
LaShawn McCoy has an opening on the right side, punches into the end zone for the touchdown.
Or catch it later on demand.
Offset backs behind Mahomes. The give is to Williams. Starts right, cuts it back to the left, and blows into the end zone for the touchdown.
You call the plays. Follow the NFL anytime, anywhere, all season long with TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
Far wing, elevates, triple bucket.
The roar of the crowd. The shot clock ticks down. Will the ball go in? The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. And the replays just don't cut it.
The sideline, the man bleeds for three.
TuneIn Premium brings you every minute of the NBA season streaming live, so you can be there when it matters most. Hear it now. Hear it live on TuneIn.
Fake in the lane, turnaround jumper from 8 feet is good on
Search
the right.
NBA today to start listening.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Network of news and financial information 24 hours a day. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now, a global news update.
House Democrats are planning to unveil 2 articles of impeachment today against President Trump. Correspondent Phil Mattingly checking them out.
On abuse of power, they will stick very closely what Democrats have been laying out regarding the president's decision to withhold security assistance in exchange for political investigations into some of his rivals. The obstruction of Congress, the ability of the administration to repeatedly defy subpoenas will be at the crux and at the center.
House vote could come within days. Another person injured in a volcanic eruption in New Zealand has died, bringing death toll to 6. About 30 people remain hospitalized after Monday's eruption and suffering severe burns. South Korea says North Korea's latest weapon test was of a rocket and possibly for a prohibited long-range rocket launch. Monday night, Philadelphia Eagles own a share of first place in the AFC East after beating the Giants 23-7. Stock futures are down this morning. The U.S. tariffs against Chinese import scheduled to go into effect this weekend. I'm Michael Toscano.
I'm Nick Sobleski, a select quote agent with a true story that could save you hundreds of dollars a year. A woman named Digitald. Her husband, Ray, has a $1,000 life insurance policy, but is changing jobs and can't take it with him.
Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrell.
Is that good for American finance? What is happening with the headcount?
Right, where it counts. Bloomberg Surveillance, weekday mornings at 7 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
An I'm Karen Moscow. It is 6:47 on Wall Street. Futures this morning are moving lower. We go to the First Word breaking news desk for today's morning call. Here's Bill Maloney. Bill, good morning.
And good morning, Karen. Like you said, U.S. futures are under pressure right now, with Dow futures down 105 points. S&P's dropped 10, and NASDAQ futures decline by 35. The U.S. 10-year yield at 1.8%. Gold is trading higher by 5. And Shanghai was little changed overnight. Note that the Japanese 10-year yield hit 0% for the first time since March. European markets are also under pressure, led by 1.5% losses in Germany. And back in the U.S. on the economic front at 8:30, non-farm productivity and unit labor costs. After the bell last night, Toll Brothers EPS beat the highest estimates. And regarding earnings this morning, HD Supply beat by a penny. And look for AutoZone to report around 7 a.m. In other news, Jefferies said that SoftBank will probably sell part of its Alibaba stake to help pay for a buyback. And wrapping things up, CF Industries was cut to underperform at Bernstein. Bunge raised to buy over at Goldman Sachs. Church & Dwight cut to underweight at JP Morgan. And JP Morgan was cut to market perform over at KBW. Live from the First Breaking News Desk, I'm Bill Maloney. Karen?
All right, Bill, thank you. And to hear live breaking news over your Bloomberg, type squawk on your terminal, SQUAWK, and that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's John Tucker with more on what's going on around the world. John.
And good morning, Karen. President Trump will learn what charges he faces today when House Democrats revealed 2 articles of impeachment, one on abuse of power, the other on obstruction of justice. And committee leaders will announce the next step at a news conference set for 9 a.m. in Washington. Bloomberg Radio will carry it live. The French government may be looking at delaying pension reform that has sparked mass protests. Walk-offs brought more than 800,000 people into the streets and disrupted trains, planes, and hospitals. In Sydney, Australia's air pollution was so bad it set off fire alarms. The air quality index soared past the hazardous threshold. The Sydney Opera House could barely be seen through the haze, with smoke stinging eyes and making it difficult to breathe. It's the result of brush fires. Sports, the Giants blow a 14-point second-half lead. They lose to the Eagles in overtime, 23-17 for their 9th straight loss. And on the ice, the Islanders win, the Bruins and Capitals lose. In basketball, the Celtics win, and the Warriors lose. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take on Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm John Tucker. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
Okay, John, thank you. We are live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studios. We're at 6:49 on Wall Street. Time now to check what's going on in D.C. Some of the top stories in the nation's capital include an Inspector General's report that shows no bias, but plenty of mistakes made in the FBI's investigation into Trump campaign officials. The White House agreeing to changes to the U.S.-Mexico-Canada deal to get it passed in the U.S. House of Representatives. And the president meeting this afternoon with Russia's foreign minister for the first time since a controversial Oval Office meeting 2 years ago. Also making news, as John mentioned, House Democrats expected to unveil articles of impeachment at a news conference just about 2 hours from now. Let's bring in Bloomberg Washington reporter Kathleen Hunter. So as John mentioned, the articles we're expecting from the Democrats include one on abuse of power, the other involving obstruction of Congress. What more are we expecting from the Democrats this morning?
Well, I think we could get a clearer sense of exactly how the rest of the week is going to unfold. I think there's a sense that we could be in the position to see a House vote as soon as next week, a full House vote. That seems to be the likely timeline, but we might be able to fill in some of the details today and also get a broader sense this morning of whether or not there are going to be additional articles of impeachment beyond the 2 that we already know about. There seems to be, at least as of last night, some outstanding questions about whether this was it or there could be more coming.
So does that mean that we could see not just more articles of impeachment potentially, but more investigation, even as there could be this vote next week on the articles that we're expecting to be announced today?
That's certainly possible. All along, Democrats have been kind of loath to foreclose the possibility that they're going to do more investigating or bring forth more articles. It doesn't really behoove them to do that. And so I would imagine that they'd keep that option open as they move forward.
Now, this comes after the what we expect to be at least the final announced hearing before the House Judiciary Committee, where lawyers for the Intelligence Committee laid out the evidence. What new did we get from that hearing yesterday?
So I think a good way to think about yesterday's hearing is almost as though in a trial where you have closing arguments, it wasn't so much that there was any new evidence presented. It was really just a chance for each side to once again lay out their narrative and sort of frame the debate in their own interpretation heading into this pivotal couple days on the impeachment front. And so it was more of an oratory exercise in that regard than it was really kind of an exercise in introducing new evidence.
It's interesting to watch these hearings unfold. It seems so quickly since the Intelligence Committee heard from the witnesses and now this presentation of evidence in the House Judiciary Committee. Have we gotten any sense that any of this has actually swayed public opinion on whether to bring articles of impeachment and potentially remove the president from office?
Well, I think it's been really notable that since the end of September, when Nancy Pelosi first announced that the House would open an impeachment inquiry, we've not seen a lot of significant movement in the polls in terms of overall public opinion. There was a bit of a nudge up at the beginning in terms of the support for the inquiry and also the support for removing Trump from office. But we haven't really seen a lot of movement on that in recent weeks. And particularly significant, I think, is the resilience of Trump's support among Republican voters, particularly in certain key battleground states like Wisconsin, which a lot of folks think will be really key to deciding the 2020 race. In states like that, and I guess overall nationwide, we really haven't seen a drop in Trump's support among Republicans and also in opposition among Republicans to the inquiry. So I think that says to me at least that the narrative that Republicans in the White House are putting forward is working.
And talking of the potential impact on the 2020 race, we know President Trump is going to be holding a rally in Pennsylvania this evening. But before that, he's going to be meeting with Russia's foreign minister. Last time these two met, Kate, one could argue that it almost set off the path that we've been on in Washington for the last couple of years now.
Exactly. This last meeting that they had was in 2017, and it was alleged that Trump disclosed sensitive intelligence information to Lavrov while he was there. And I think that meeting in and of itself became a factor in Robert Mueller's, the special counsel's investigation that concluded earlier this year. And so I think that, anytime there's sort of a face-to-face meeting at this stage between the president and a high-ranking official from the Kremlin, obviously that raises some eyebrows. And so, one would imagine that Trump would really be walking a tight line in terms of how he conducts himself today in the meeting. But we know that Trump tends to operate differently from past presidents and sometimes doesn't conform to what was considered to be traditional presidential protocol. So I'm sure there'll be lots of questions about exactly what transpires at the White House today, and whether or not there's a clear answer on that, I think will be something that will be interesting to watch going forward.
Well, what is the Kremlin saying about the purpose for Lavrov coming to Washington today?
Well, the sort of ostensible purpose is that, this is going to be a chance for them to discuss the bilateral relationship between Washington and Moscow. Now, obviously, that's a very broad set of dynamics. And I think that, obviously, that very relationship has been at the center of some of these investigations. And so it's a bit of a tricky area for the Trump White House to walk right now.
And just quickly, this comes as Russian President Putin and Ukrainian President Zelensky have been meeting to try to end hostilities. Could we see that come up today?
I guess, it certainly could. I think it's just a very interesting, as you point out, a very interesting dynamic. We have Lavrov in Washington meeting with Trump, and then Zelensky, who's at the very center of, the July 25th call between Trump and Zelensky is at the very center of the impeachment probe. And Zelensky, meanwhile, is meeting with Putin. And so it's kind of a small group of world leaders that have been very central to all of these questions, all of whom are meeting in various ways with each other this week.
Fascinating. Bloomberg Washington reporter Kathleen Hunter, thank you as always. Read more at Bloomberg.com or on the Bloomberg Terminal. Follow all the latest on Bloomberg Radio in Washington at Bloomberg 99.1 and 105.7 FM HD2. Karen.
Thanks, Nathan. 6:56 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg Small Business Report, and here's John Tucker.
Baltimore-based P3 Innovation was started by Biffrey Braxton in 2014. With 9 employees, P3 provides data science services to the federal government. helping them make sense of what they have. Braxton ensures a continuous stream of government contracts by showing Uncle Sam how to do more with less.
Regardless of who's in office, we seem to get business either from the defense area or from social services, depending on who's what kind of administration is running things at the moment.
Among P3's clients, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, Braxton collects reams of data for them. With that data, his firm can show them what they're spending money on, where they're spending too much, and how to make the most of what they have. And that's today's Bloomberg Small Business Report. I'm John Tucker.
All right, John Tucker, thank you. Earnings from AutoZone, first quarter profit beating analyst estimates. S&P futures are down 10 points this morning. Dow futures down 102. NASDAQ futures down 33. 10-year Treasury up 4/32, yield 1.80%, and the yield on the 2-year 1.60%. The euro is at 1.1082 against the dollar. The British pound 1.3176. Bloomberg Surveillance is straight ahead. Tom Keene in London, Jonathan Farrow and Lisa Abramowitz in New York. For Nathan Hager, I'm Karen Moscow, and this is Bloomberg.
Influential conversation.
There are plenty of parties over the festive period. They'll have food and drink, music too. Some will even have rides and fireworks. But one has all that, plus a big something extra. Big Game 12 is London's biggest rugby party. To watch Harlequins take on Leicester Tigers from just £17 a ticket for children and £27 for adults, go to tickets.quins.co.uk or search Big Game 12. Kick-off 4:30pm, Saturday 28th of December, Twickenham Stadium.
Ah, Christmas, a time for sharing gifts and laughter, and photos and videos. Make the most of it with a SIM-only deal packed with data from Tesco Mobile. Like a 10-gig SIM for just £13 a month. It's just one of the ways we're celebrating 100 years of great value. Go in store or search Tesco Mobile today. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Ends 29th of December. 12-month contract and unlocked 4G-enabled phone required. Terms apply. See tescomobile.com/terms.
I've always loved a kitchen experiment, especially smoothies. I've blended all sorts of mad combinations. Strawberry and charcoal, broccoli and chocolate. Not my best, that. But when I test blenders in the Witch Lab, it's not about flavour, it's about performance. Our tests use proper tough stuff, hard ice, strong veg, rough nuts. And the blenders that can hack it are the only ones we recommend for your kitchen.
Which tests harder so you can buy smarter. Visit which.co.uk.
Capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Economics.
The Federal Reserve's independence is crucial.
Central banks should be prepared and not presumptuous.
Finance.
In order to grow, you need to innovate.
Global money doesn't like uncertainty.
Investment.
I think the issue in the market is really more about the possibility of a recession in the next couple of years.
I do think we need to get back to where we have always been, the American dream.
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrow on Bloomberg Radio.
From New York City for our audience worldwide, good morning. This is Bloomberg Surveillance. Coming up on the program, the silence is deafening ahead of this week's trade deadline. The two-day FOMC meeting begins. Chair Powell looking to engineer a soft landing, and the British people heading to the polls as the British economy stagnates. From the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio, hello Tuesday. Here is your Tuesday morning price action. Equities rolling over just a little bit on the S&P 500, down 0.33%. The damage in Europe a whole lot harder. The DAX down by 1.4%. On the equity benchmark in Frankfurt, Germany, we are indeed lower. In the bond market, Treasury set up as follows. Yields grinding lower by a single basis point on the 10-year to 180. On a 2-year note, we are in and around 161. And in foreign exchange, we are 24 hours away from a Fed decision, 48 hours away from a British election. Sterling outperforming once again, a stronger pound this morning. So guys, 5 days away from a trade deadline. And Lisa, no comment from the Chinese, No comment from the United States. The silence is absolutely deafening.
But if you talk to any analyst who has intimate knowledge of these negotiations, they'll say that silence is actually the best sign that they're actually getting stuff done. Because actually, if you start to see a lot of leaks, that typically is a sign that the sides are further apart and trying to push each other towards some kind of outcome.
The consensus view is that something gets done.
Absolutely.
You can make the accusation as to whether that is complacency. It's just an observation. That seems to be the consensus view. The only man that seems to care at the moment is this guy called the DAX over in Europe, with the equity benchmark there down by 1.4%. Here in the United States, really muted price action on quite a busy week.
Yeah, a lot of people, I think, are expecting some sort of deal. Or actually, I would say the higher likelihood is to push back the deadline for the tariffs, and that is the baked-in assumption right now in markets.
This coming Thursday, there will be a general election. I'm pleased to say that we have full coverage coming up for you. There will be a special on Thursday evening, beginning at 5 p.m. Eastern. Alongside myself will be the likes of Guy Johnson and Anna Edwards, and alongside me through the next couple of days, I'll be joining Tom Keane over in London. Good morning to you, Tom.
Good morning, John. Really interesting here. I read William Hague, the former foreign minister, on 3 flavors of a hung parliament. Folks, I'm pleased to report I was more confused than when I started the essay by the venerable Mr. Hague. John, the complexities of this election are A, stunning, and B, very non-American. I go back to the thing I've quoted a couple times, which is the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom possibly, remotely, but possibly could lose his seat in the west of London.
In Uxbridge, it's a tight one. It got tighter in the last election and could get a whole lot tighter this time around as well. A lot of marginal seats we can discuss through the next 24 hours, Tom, but just looking at the FX market, sterling stronger going into this, approaching 132.
Yeah, and on euro sterling as well, you're really out to 2 standard deviations strong sterling. Let's do this. Let's turn to markets. Seema Shah with us in London here, the chief strategist for the Principal Global Investors Group. Thrilled that she could be with us. I love your note because it's short and right to the point. And Seema, you have some wonderful phrases that I need you to explain to our audience across America and worldwide. I love the idea of the vertigo of equities. This isn't Alfred Hitchcock, is it? What is equity vertigo for next year?
So what it means, Tom, is we are expecting equities to continue to rise next year, really inflated by central bank easing, not really inflated by very strong economics. Mm-hmm. And as they continue to rise and those valuations become more and more expensive and disconnected from weak economics, it means that you're going to get to the point where investors are getting increasingly scared of the heights of equities. Now, that's not mean to say that we expect an equity market correction next year, but we are certainly getting closer with that vertigo and people start to feel a bit sick.
Is it a bubble? Is it by definition, I think of Steve Roach, the legend from Morgan Stanley, now Yale, or even Chairman Bernanke. I hate this phrase, but it works here. Is it on the edge of bubble territory?
I think there's a fair number of people who would say that. I would say, however, that you have got the prospect of economics catching up. So it's not a done deal that the bubble will continue to inflate, right. But you could get economics catching up with it. But at this stage, certainly valuations are very expected, but they will continue to be supported by central banks.
So I want to go someplace else. Is the shift to international? Is the shift to stay with U.S. big cap something that worked this year? Is it a year of stick with what works, or is it a year of shifting to new ideas?
So it's a little bit of both. You stick with some of the stuff that has worked really well, such as mega caps, as you said. Some of the defensive areas like real estate we also continue to like. But also as we go into next year, there's going to be increasing opportunities, which will be important because investors need to have a stake in the upside, which we do think there will be opportunities for.
I look at the rest of your note, and again, what's so great about it is it's really brief, but you talk about risk velocity. You talk about, I guess, what is this, a quickening of risk?
Yeah, what it is, we tend to talk about the number of risks out there, but we never think about how quickly it transitions to portfolios. So that's what we're expecting next year. There's a number of different factors, but at least from this perspective, governments and political interference and a number of things we've been seeing increasing over the last 2 years. And we expect that to continue as governments take a larger role than central banks have. And then you see a lot of the risks, such as a trade war, eventually transitioning to the portfolios very quickly.
Seema, Lisa over here in New York, and one thing when we're talking about bubbles, I have to say, it's not all stocks, because there have been certain stocks that have been beaten up. The stocks that resemble bonds or do best when bonds are rallying, some people are concerned that the valuations there have gotten incredibly inflated. I'm talking about utilities or real estate investment trusts. How concerned are you about a massive drawdown, a massive sell-off in those particular stocks?
I mean, I think it is a concern, and I think that as we see those valuations, that disconnect between some which are extremely overvalued, which are some which are relatively cheap by history, if you do get that very technical shift, you could see a very, very sharp move. So almost that risk velocity coming through very sharply in a number of the areas that have performed extremely well. And you've named a couple there, such as utilities.
Seema, I'm just wondering who's participated in this particular rally this year. The Wall Street Journal out with a fascinating article yesterday referring to some data from Refinitiv Lipper that said investors have pulled $135.5 billion from US stock-focused mutual funds and ETFs so far this year, the biggest withdrawals on record. Seema, who's been in the market to take advantage of this?
You know, when we talk to investors, actually, even looking back to the first quarter of this year, when there were still a lot of concerns, the first question we would get from investors was, when can I put my money back to work? They were desperate. So as soon as there were any indications to come in, that's when people started ploughing in, and we've seen movement from hedge funds. There's been a lot of the momentum trading and a lot of the ETFs as well playing on this game.
Well, this is a really important idea. I thought Cliff Asness quoted in Zero Hedge yesterday was brilliant about the cliche, there's money on the sidelines. Is there money? He tore it to shreds. Is there money on the sidelines?
I think there is. You know, from our perspective, as long as you don't see a recession on the horizon, you should be invested in risk assets. Of course, you should protect on the downside and the defensive space. And that's exactly why defensives, especially in equities, have performed so well this year, is that people want to put their money to work. Now, there were some who didn't get back in on the rally at the beginning of the year when equities really bottomed. And so for those people, they didn't put it in cash, but they just waited, desperate to put it back into work.
They're desperate. I mean, do you sense that desperation right now? I mean, we're up 20. I haven't even looked, John. I've been so busy over here. Arsenal last night against West Ham. OMG, that was exciting.
Did you watch that game?
I watched it. I went to it. The S&P 500 up 25% so far this year. And you're telling me people are dying on the sidelines to get in?
Well, not necessarily equities, because as you said, they are extremely overvalued. But there are, you know, people want to get something for their money.
Where am I going to get that something? That's the money question.
Yeah, absolutely. So the couple of areas that we really like for next year is emerging market debt. Now, that hasn't performed as well as the rest of the equity space or the fixed income space. And we think that the macro fundamentals for next year do look pretty good. The same thing with stuff like preferred securities, COCOs. They are looking really good. They have, the banking sector has been beaten up in a number of parts of the world, but they are protected by government. So that's another upside. But we also really like some of the illiquid assets, specifically private real estate.
Seema, thank you so much. Seema Shah, just wonderful. With a really, I love it. I get these 50-page 2020 things. Who's got time to read that? Thank you so much. With Principal Global Investors, 5 themes that will shape the markets. Bloomberg surveillance this morning from London, from New York, brought to you by Inovalon, a leading provider of cloud-based platforms, empowering data-driven healthcare for insurance companies, physicians, pharmacy, and pharmaceutical companies. Inovalon data has a story to tell. Inovalon gives it a voice. John, I can't wait for you to get over here to translate the nuances of this election. I'm fascinated by all the reading I'm doing of how complex it is versus a relatively simple U.S. process.
Really looking forward to being there, Tom. I'll be with you tomorrow morning and we'll get the show started, and the countdown to the election will officially begin 24 hours out. Ahead of all of that, the countdown to December 15th continues, and the silence is absolutely deafening. Very little clarity from either side as to where these trade talks are going into an important deadline for the US and China. Ahead of that, equities in Europe roll over. A muted response in the United States. We're down by around about 1/3% on the S&P 500. In the bond market, the shape of things as follows for you. Treasury yields coming in a single basis point to 180 on a 10-year, down a basis point too on the 2-year note to 160. From New York and London this morning, a good morning to you all. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
Now let's get the news. We've got our own John Tucker here. John.
All right, Lisa and John. House Democrats plan to unveil 2 articles of impeachment against President Trump this morning. This likely will lead to a party line vote of the full House next week that would make Donald Trump only the 3rd U.S. president to be impeached. Bloomberg Radio will carry this morning's news conference live at 9 o'clock. The Trump administration plans to sign off on key adjustments to a free trade deal with Mexico and Canada today. The move comes after Mr. Trump secured approval from Richard Trumka, head of the AFL-CIO, for changes to the agreement. And the Pentagon would be allowed to install low-yield nuclear weapons on submarines and buy as many as 90 F-35 Joint Strike Fighters under a compromised defense authorization measure headed for a House vote this week. Global news 24 hours a day on the air in a quick take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm John Tucker, and this is Bloomberg. Lisa.
Thank you so much, John Tucker. We are seeing a softer tone ahead of the U.S. Open. Dollar weakness, euro strength today. You're seeing it yields edge just a slight bit lower. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
Why has J.D. Power ranked Commonwealth Financial Network #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms for the 6th straight time? We think it comes down to one thing: you. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us #1 in client support, #1 in firm leadership, #1 in operational support, #1 in compensation, #1 in professional development support, and #1 in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com and feel the power. Member FINRA, a registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power Award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
The lifeblood of tech startups isn't just money. It's executive and technical skills. The kind of skills that companies need to build real products. And the skills that venture capitalist Chris Sugden of Edison Partners sees in the graduates that are coming out of New Jersey Institute of Technology.
The amazing thing about NJIT is their graduates, they have multiple offers on average, not just one. They're coming out with real skill sets that are immediately hireable and available to them. I think we see an understanding by the faculty and administration at NJIT that we've got to train and educate the whole student, not just their one side of their brain. And I do think that's sort of part of the DNA today. There's practical and there's sort of academia, and merging those two together and understanding that if we're going to have our young people go get great jobs and have great successful careers, they've got to have both sides of their brain activated. And I think we see that with NJIT.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu. Rich.
When it comes to music, I've heard it all. Pink Floyd, Sean Paul, Slipknot. But in the Witch Test Lab, hearing isn't enough. When we test headphones, we really listen. Not just to the music, but to the stuff that gets in the way. The traffic, the chatter, all that. Mind the gap. We simulate the loudest commute to find you the headphones that cancel out the noise. So you know we're only recommending the best.
Which tests harder so you can buy smarter. Visit which.co.uk.
On 3, our unlimited data is actually unlimited. Like for reals. None of this, we're so unlimited, but you can't watch your fave Christmas film endlessly, or dead scroll inspo for tree decorations until 4 in the morning. We wouldn't do that to you.
We have no speed limits, no data caps, and you'll be 5G ready at no extra cost.
Ho, ho, ho.
Switch to 3, in-store or online. See 3.co.uk/unlimited-data.
Christmas. A time for celebrating, unwrapping, and unwinding. Capture every moment with an epic iPhone 6S with a 12-megapixel camera. Now only $12.99 a month from Tesco Mobile, saving you £72. It's just one of the ways we're celebrating 100 years of great value. Go in-store or search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Saving £2 per month over 36 months was £14.99. 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements required. Subject to status. Terms apply. See tescomobile.com/terms.
Smoked salmon for breakfast? Well, it is Christmas. At Asda, our extra special gin, juniper and lemon smoked salmon is just £4 for a 120-gram pack. Or for only £6, get a 200-gram pack of our extra special smoked salmon. Asda, let's make Christmas extra special. Selected stores subject to availability.
Television. Here's David Inglis on Bloomberg Markets.
With us, Faith Nagut out of Bank of America Securities, ASEAN economist. Are you seeing any early signs that Vietnam is overheating, or are we seeing capacity issues because Vietnam is not as big as China?
At the macro level, there are no major signs of overheating, I have to say. Inflation has stayed very benign. Wage growth has been high in certain areas, but the overall nationwide wage growth is not too high by historical standards. And we think Vietnam has the capacity, especially if it can unlock the vast amount of labor that is still employed in the agricultural sector, for example. However, policymakers are looking at some constraints that have started to appear in infrastructure, especially on the ports. And more importantly, going forward, will also be on the energy sector, whether Vietnam has sufficient energy to supply the incoming industries. I think the government is looking at increasing its capex in not just roads and ports, but also in the energy sector. Labor is quite straightforward to move people from the rural to the urban areas. There is certainly work to be done in terms of enhancing, the human capital capabilities of the Vietnamese workers. In a nutshell, it's a far away from an overheating economy. The economy is doing well, and it will continue to do well into 2020, according to our forecast.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. U.S. stock index futures are retreating alongside stocks in Europe as investors turn cautious in the countdown to major central bank meetings and a deadline for fresh U.S. tariffs on Chinese goods. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures down 11 points. Dow futures down 111. NASDAQ futures down 36. The DAX in Germany is down 1.5%. 10-year Treasury up 5/32, yield 1.8%. The yield on the 2-year 1.59%. NYMEX crude oil is down 0.6% or 33 cents at $58.69 a barrel. COMEX gold is up 0.5% or $7.20 at $14.7220 an ounce. The euro 1.1082 against the dollar. British pound 1.3169 and the yen 108.53. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom, John, and Lisa.
Karen, thanks so much. John Farrow and Lisa Abramowitz in New York. I'm Tom Keene in London. And now the most frustrating guest we have in all of Bloomberg surveillance. Because when the journalist John Fenby walks in the door with his prolific writing, you don't know what to talk about. Should we talk about France and his classic one volume on France? Should we talk about his new effort, Crucible, about coming out of World War II? Or the new edition of your classic Penguin book on China? Lisa Abramowitz said, go there. So that's what we're going to do. Okay. On China, we have a President Xi. Is it a fallback to Mao? Is the new leadership of China a redux of Mao?
It's not a redux to Mao in terms of ideology and so on. He still believes in the reforms, the economic reforms post Deng Xiaoping, but he believes in the kind of power and the power centralization which we had under Mao. So it's a return in terms of how China is run from the very top, but not necessarily in all the details of how it's run.
There are 3 or 4 people that have had the courage to write on all of China, like you have, of course, the giant Jonathan Spence and you, Mr. Fenby, as well. Within writing on China is the response of the rest of the world. How do you synthesize President Trump's response
to China?
To his China.
To his China, it's very erratic, I'd say, is the phrase. What we don't have from the United States is a coherent policy towards China, whereas Xi Jinping is pretty coherent. I'm not a great fan for the idea that China always sets things in very, very long-term planning, but they are doing that vis-a-vis Trump at the moment.
I have the clearest memories of being in Hong Kong with Governor Chang the day the WTO began to splinter apart. Now we're really talking about the end of that multilateral experiment. How critical is it that we see, how crucial is it rather that we see the WTO drift away?
Well, China likes the WTO, and the danger if you get into a series of bilateral arrangements on trade, rather than having an overarching organization like the WTO, is that China will make an awful lot of deals around the world using its economic clout quite nakedly to gain political influence.
Jonathan, given your vast experience in China and with China, I'd love your perspective on a question that Jonathan Ferro has been asking all morning, which is a really good question. Is the silence that we've been hearing around the December 15th tariffs a good thing or a bad thing in terms of them actually reaching some sort of accord?
It shows, I think, that they are down to very serious negotiation at the moment. This is less the negotiation by tweet and silence from the Chinese side, and it's more a sign that they are getting down to real nitty-gritty elements here, and that involves, of course, increased Chinese purchases of American goods, particularly agriculture, but also it will require some indication from the US side that they're willing to consider tariff rollbacks or further delays in tariffs to keep the Chinese happy.
Another big question sort of overhanging all of these negotiations is who has more to lose, and there was data coming out overnight about China's consumer inflation accelerating to a 7-year high in November. This largely rides in the back of higher pork prices, but you see factory prices declining. This raises the specter of stagflation, of a concern for the PBOC, what they are going to do in order to juice growth without causing a sort of hyperinflation that impedes the economy. How should we view this? How concerned is the PBOC at this point?
It is pretty concerned, I think, and its traditional transition mechanisms aren't working as well as they used to. And you have a leadership in Beijing which doesn't want to go for the old-fashioned stop-go big stimulus packages that we've seen since 2008. They want a more managed, more stable economy, and they're trying to do this in the middle of the trade war, and that's difficult.
And we can't let you go without a discussion of Crucible. You write prolifically, Jonathan Fenby. Crucible is about a time that seems so important right now. Is it the end of World War II?
It's the end of World War II, and it's really the emergence of the new world system, both through the US involvement in the world and lots and lots of other things happening all across the globe.
What's the distinction there? I mean, I think of the starvation in Europe, those difficult years of 1947, literally famine before the Marshall Plan is well. Did the U.S. get that right, and can we get that spirit back?
The U.S., I think, got that right. In fact, they were quite helped by the Soviet Union and the way that Stalin got it wrong for most of the time. The U.S. got it right through the Marshall Plan, through NATO, the establishment of NATO, and so on, and it needs that kind of commitment which you saw from the Truman administration to get things going again.
I've got another 2 hours of questions.
Right.
Another time. Jonathan Fenby, thank you so much. Folks, I'm going to cut to the chase. His one volume in China is absolutely definitive. It is a sprawling history, particularly of modern China. His one volume on France is just the single best thing out there, particularly on the cultural aspects of what make the French different. And Crucible, 13 months that forged our world with the emotion of awe after World War II. John, in looking at markets, I'm going to say there's a weight to the tape. Why?
There is in Europe. There's not much of one in the United States. We're down about 1/3 of 1% on the S&P 500. I'd pick up where Jonathan Fenby left off. The fact that we have this really, really interesting silence between the United States and China over the last week, going into a really important trade deadline, tells you that things are getting serious. Now, Tom, that could still mean it can break either way. Let's be clear about that. I just have no idea which way this breaks. I think the market, the consensus view right now from the guests we have on the program, Tom, essentially is around the idea that these tariffs this Sunday get delayed.
I agree the delay is the easy part, but the then what is hugely open. Sterling right now, I've got to quote this for John Farrell on the Gulf Stream over here in a number of hours, 131.73. Banner, Farrell can afford London. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Market Minute. A gauge of small business sentiment in the U.S. just posted its largest gain in more than a year. The National Federation of Independent Business issued its report this morning that beat economists' expectations. Wall Street looks headed for a lower open this morning. Investors are awaiting news on whether Washington will go ahead with the planned December 15th tariff hike on imports from China. And stocks slipped to start the week. The Dow was down 105 points. A top Sprint executive thought a merger with T-Mobile could lead to price hikes across the wireless industry. That's according to evidence presented by states led by New York and California, suing to block the deal on antitrust grounds. The comments run contrary to public statements by the companies that prices will drop. Now that Viacom and CBS have merged, they're looking to generate $500 million in cost savings, and Bloomberg says that may include possibly selling the CBS skyscraper in Midtown Manhattan. CBS occupies about a third of the building. Gina Cervetti, Bloomberg Radio.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President, Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Christmas. A time for celebrating, unwrapping, and unwinding. Capture every moment with an epic iPhone 6S with a 12-megapixel camera. Now only $12.99 a month from Tesco Mobile, saving you £72. It's just one of the ways we're celebrating 100 years of great value. Go in store or search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Saving £2 per month over 36 months was £14.99. 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements required. Subject to status. Terms apply. See tescomobile.com/terms.
Coffee shop, cashback, cat flaps, cashback, beanbags, rucksack, hire car, buy a car, flapjack, cashback, dumbbells, cashback, takeaway, holiday to anywhere the sun is at, bum bag, laptop, big match, hatchback, binge watching, paintballing, crab fishing, cashback, anything you want to buy, everywhere you want to go. Guess what? Cashback. Whatever you spend your money on, get money back every time with the American Express Platinum Cashback Everyday Credit Card. Search Amex Cashback. Representative 22.9% APR variable. Minimum annual spend to receive cashback. Terms apply. 18 plus subject to approval.
Christmas. A time for celebrating, unwrapping, and unwinding. Capture every moment with an epic iPhone 6S with a 12-megapixel camera. Now only $12.99 a month from Tesco Mobile, saving you £72. It's just one of the ways we're celebrating 100 years of great value. Go in store or search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Saving £2 per month over 36 months was £14.99. 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements required. Subject to status. Terms apply. See tescomobile.com/terms.
Christmas. A time for celebrating, unwrapping, and unwinding. Capture every moment with an epic iPhone 6S with a 12-megapixel camera. Now only $12.99 a month from Tesco Mobile, saving you £72. It's just one of the ways we're celebrating 100 years of great value. Go in store or search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Saving £2 per month over 36 months was £14.99. 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements required. Subject to status. Terms apply. See tescomobile.com/terms.
The NBA is on TuneIn Premium. Each week, TuneIn picks an NBA game you just can't miss. The Miami Heat are taking their talents to Texas to take on the second-year phenom, Luka Doncic, and the Dallas Mavericks.
Back trying to make it 11-2.
This Saturday, the Miami Heat are at the Dallas Mavericks. Tip-off is at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. Search NBA on TuneIn to follow your favorite NBA team today.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 1061. To San Francisco, Bloomberg 960. To the country, Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
From New York City, this is Bloomberg Surveillance for our audience worldwide. We're live on Bloomberg Radio, 2 hours away from the opening bell. The news you need to know this hour. Stocks around the world lower as markets look for signs of progress on US-China trade talks, as well as results of the UK election and policy decisions from the Fed and European Central Bank. Meantime, consumer inflation in China accelerated to a 7-year high in November. The consumer price index rose 4.5% from a year earlier. In the UK, the economy unexpectedly stagnated in October, marking 3 straight months without growth. Gross domestic product was unchanged following 2 consecutive months of decline. And finally, the White House plans to sign off on changes to a landmark trade deal with Mexico and Canada that would replace NAFTA. That would clear the way for a vote in the House, perhaps as soon as next week. A little bit more on that a little bit later. Let's get you the headlines and stories from around the world. Let's say good morning to John Tucker. Good morning, John.
Yeah, and Jonathan, President Trump will learn what charges he'll face today. That's when House Democrats revealed 2 articles of impeachment. One on abuse of power, the other on obstruction of Congress. More articles involving obstruction may follow. Committee leaders will announce the next step at a news conference that is set for 9 a.m. in Washington. Bloomberg Radio will carry it live. President Trump will face a more assertive Congress on foreign policy. The Republican-led Senate Foreign Relations Committee tomorrow considers sanctions on Turkey and Russia, both countries that Mr. Trump has tried to court despite Congress's wariness. The panel also has been the driving force between 2 recent laws to support Hong Kong protesters, which Mr. Trump reluctantly signed. And climate tracker data show the world is on track to warm by almost 5.4 degrees Fahrenheit by the end of the century. That's double the rate identified as needed to contain the worst impacts of climate change. Global news 24 hours a day on the air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm John Tucker. This is Bloomberg Jonathan.
John Tucker, thank you, sir. It's time now for the Bloomberg NBC Sports Report. Here is John Stashower.
Jonathan, Giants fans have had precious little to cheer for this season. They did enjoy the first half last night in Philadelphia. The return of Eli Manning, his family, including big brother Peyton, all on hand to see Eli throw touchdown passes of 35 and 55 yards to Darius Slayton, who was 7 years old when Eli made his first NFL start. Giants had a 2-touchdown lead. But in the second half, 6 possessions, 6 punts, only 2 first downs, only 29 yards. And back came the Eagles. Carson Wentz to Zach Ertz, game-tying touchdown with 2 minutes left. And then in overtime,
Wentz will be in the gun, leaning over, 2 tight ends. He looks at a 4-man front. Arms extended, shotgun snap, looks, cocks his arm, goes in the end zone, touchdown! Ertz underneath the crossbar. Eagles have won the game in overtime.
23-17, Westwood won the call. The Eagles go into a tie for first, while the Giants have lost a club record tying 9 in a row. Good win for the Islanders, 5-1 at Tampa Bay. Steven Strasburg re-signs with the Washington Nationals, 7 years, $245 million. With the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update, I'm John Stashower. Jonathan?
John Stashower, thank you, sir. John with the sports there. You've had the news. Let's get you some price action this Tuesday morning. Equities with a small decline here in the United States, adding to yesterday's losses, down 9 points on the S&P 500, softer by a third of 1%. If you want a bigger move, look to Europe. The losses there are a whole lot bigger, especially given the consensus call going into 2020 about being overweight the rest of the world versus the United States. The rest of the world not great today. The DAX down by 1.41% in Frankfurt, Germany. From New York and London this morning, good morning to you all for our audience worldwide. This is Bloomberg Surveillance on Bloomberg Radio.
From our world headquarters in New York, our studios in London at Queen Victoria Street. Good morning, everyone. John Farrow, Tom Keene, and Lisa Bramwitz, thank you for being with us coast to coast and, of course, worldwide as well. Let's get right to it with futures -9. The Bloomberg NJIT STEM report brought to you by VentureLink at NJIT, a business accelerator offering the resources and support that tech companies need to thrive. More at njit.edu/entrepreneurship. Here's Nathan Hager.
Thank you, Tom, Jonathan, Lisa. Good morning. Here's what's making news in science, technology, engineering, and math. You might say Trash Day is coming to outer space. The European Space Agency has just announced the first ever mission to clean up all the debris we've sent into orbit since Sputnik. The agency has selected a Swiss startup called Clear Space. to do the job. It'll begin its work in March with an initial contract focused on creating a new market for debris removal and in-orbit servicing. The mission is set to launch in 2025. It could eventually lead to the cleanup of more than 3,000 defunct satellites. NASA's satellites, meantime, are revealing just how intense the wildfires are in Australia. New data from the U.S. Space Agency's MODIS sensors show the wildfires have generated 5,837 hotspots in the last 48 hours. That is more than any other country in the world. And those fires are burning with greater intensity than the next 10 fire-affected countries combined. MODIS sensors circle the Earth every 2 days, capturing data about the Earth's surface and atmosphere. And NASA says it has finished the rocket that will send astronauts back to the moon, aiming to do that by 2024. The Space Launch System, or SLS, will be the tallest rocket ever built at 212 feet. It's also set to be the most powerful ever, designed to reach Mach 23 times the speed of sound before separating from its Orion crew capsule. And that is today's Bloomberg NJIT STEM report. Tom, John, and Lisa.
Yeah, thanks so much, Nathan. Greatly appreciate that. 5 things you need to know to start your day. Brought to you by IBKR, the professionals' gateway to the world's markets. Their clients enjoy lowest cost access to stocks, options, futures, Forex, and fixed income from a single integrated account. Learn more at ibkr.com. John, I love your idea of the silence. You're right. It's radio silence. China, U.S. trade.
It's deafening, and the focus is elsewhere, and I find that interesting. It's on Mexico, it's on Canada, it's on USMCA, and Ambassador Lighthizer widely reported to be traveling to Mexico City today to come up with some kind of handshake agreement on a compromise to a slight adjustment of that agreement. I think that's interesting, Tom, that the focus seems to be on that agreement and not the US-China trade talks going into Sunday.
Yeah, it's interesting how they've switched, but my answer is just show me. It's like Missouri. Missouri's a state, John. It's out in the Midwest. It's
Thanks for that, Tom.
Show me state, you know. The silence, let's turn to the noise, which is the election here. John, I've been a student of this. I've read 10, 20, 30 articles, and the complexity of the parliamentary system here is just stunning. I was reading about where Wedgwood was from, where the pottery was from, and, of course, hugely difficult industrial regions right now. They want to be labor, but they don't want to be labor.
So this is a really, really important task for the pollsters this year. How do you translate the polls into seats won? One of the most accurate polls in 2017 in that election came from YouGov, and it predicted 93% of results in individual constituencies, and it was something with a really complicated name. It was called multi-level regression and post-stratification model. Ignore all of that. It's heavily, heavily detailed, and we're set to get that final particular poll at some point today, Tom. So when that comes out, that's going to be a huge lead-in to the election this Thursday.
I'll look for that. Again, it was typical Farrell, more informed than I am. The 2020 views, and this would be the rationalization to stay in equities. Everybody's coming out with their articles, John. Kit Jukes was brilliant this morning, and Seamus Shaw was great. It's just all about how do I stay in equities after going up 25%?
The argument seems to be stocks over bonds into 2020, stocks over bonds, and the rest of the world over the United States. And that's the debate that I think is going to be the big one going into a new year.
Yeah, but the interesting thing to me is that you're looking at the extra yield that you're earning to own stocks right now over a number of different types of bonds. It's not that much. You're not getting that much extra yield if you just look at it from an earnings yield or dividend yield perspective. So it's sort of the valuation context. I'm curious to see, especially if we don't see yields go further down.
Yeah. I want to go to bonds. I know, John, you're, the real yield will get worked out this week, and Lisa's money undercover as well. Over in England, they're really talking about the actuarial assumption and that everybody's yield belief has to come down. And it's just extraordinary the trap retirees are in with these low coupons.
When you say retirees, though, Tom, we've got to talk about the pension funds, haven't we? Huge pension bid at the long end of the gilt curve. And you can see where the gilt curve is right now. You can get a 50-year gilt with a yield of 1.158%. That is a massive change from where we were 10 years ago.
There is a question of what the consequences of this era will be. There was a story today on the Bloomberg talking about how ultra-wealthy families have poured nearly $800 billion into private debt. And I know this is sort of pushing into the world of money undercover and the whole idea of private markets.
Are you teasing your show?
Sure, it's today.
Can I have a show that I can tease?
What would you like to call it, Tom?
I don't know. Bloomberg
Arsenal?
Vet Bill.
Bloomberg
Arsenal.
Vet Bill.
Bloomberg
You
Vet
want to do it
Bill.
on personal finance?
Yeah, do cute puppies.
That would be cute.
Yeah, chop cute puppies and a couple of soccer balls getting thrown around. I mean, honestly, I just think that it's going to be interesting to see what the consequences will be, especially as these low rate era around the world. It's not poised to end anytime soon.
See, John, how she runs the clock down so we can't talk about.
She doesn't want to talk about a big
Arsenal's
game.
Massive triumph.
Did you enjoy the stadium, Tom?
Those bond deals.
East London.
I loved how they scored 3 goals in like 7 minutes or something.
You like that?
Pretty extraordinary.
3-1, Arsenal West Ham.
It's
Tom
not,
Keys.
it's not where the tots play.
First big football game. I'm pleased you had fun. From New York and London, this is Bloomberg Surveillance.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then go to Babbel.com, download the app, and try it for free. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just go to Babbel.com and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or go to Babbel.com and try it for free. That's BABBEL.com.
Hey y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
With the Bloomberg Business of Sports Report, I'm Charlie Pellet. Brought to you by the all-new gas-powered Sprinter from Mercedes-Benz. Russia has been banished from the Olympics and other international competitions.
Christmas. A time for celebrating, unwrapping, and unwinding. Capture every moment with an epic iPhone 6S with a 12-megapixel camera. Now only $12.99 a month from Tesco Mobile, saving you £72. It's just one of the ways we're celebrating 100 years of great value. Go in store or search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Saving £2 per month over 36 months was £14.99. 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements required. Subject to status. Terms apply. See tescomobile.com/terms.
From ESPN and the award-winning producers of The Sterling Affairs comes the latest season of 30 for 30 podcasts. 4 brand new stories of espionage.
He wanted this team to be the Barcelona of women's basketball.
Resilience.
I started to scream. I tried to get away.
Corruption.
It's the culture of win at all costs.
And rebirth.
How will we ever rebuild it?
30 for 30 Podcasts, Season 6. Listen now to 30 for 30 Podcasts on TuneIn.
Pascal gobbles up the rebound and slams it down.
Catch your favorite NBA team right here on TuneIn.
A step back deep three is up and in.
Search NBA on TuneIn and hear all the action. The NBA lives on TuneIn.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you. Whether you call yourself a Democrat, Republican, Independent, or something else, The road to 2020 is on TuneIn.
What a night! And a complete earthquake. This was
Follow every step of the Democratic primaries while hearing the latest headlines from the White House with live 24-hour news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox News Talk, and more.
We're closing in on the first results in the battle for the White House.
Experience the election through the sources you trust with the nonstop news channels on TuneIn.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards, at the goal line, it's intercepted!
Listen live as the action unfolds or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught, it is in for the right side for the touchdown.
Search NFL today.
News 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok on Twitter. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now, a global news update.
House Democrats will unveil 2 articles of impeachment this morning against President Trump, one for abuse of power, the other for obstruction of Congress. Barry Burke is the lead Democratic lawyer.
President Trump's persistent and continuing effort to coerce a foreign country to help him cheat to win an election is a clear and present danger to our free and fair elections and to our national security.
Speaker Nancy Pelosi has final say of the articles. Members considering adding another one based on obstruction outlined in the Mueller report. South Korea says it's concerned North Korea's latest weapons test the other day. Our engine shows it is preparing to launch a satellite-carrying rocket. California is fining CVS, nation's largest pharmacy chain, $3.6 million for failing to redeem deposits on bottles and cans as required at some locations. Stock futures are down this morning with new U.S. tariffs against Chinese imports scheduled to go into effect this Sunday. Toscan.
So what would you do with an extra $500 a month in your budget? $500. This isn't hypothetical, by the way. This is something you may need to think about very soon. You decided.
Sometimes the simplest method is the best one.
I think even I could figure it out today.
Balance of Power with David Weston.
You had a high estimate. It beat your high estimate.
Weekdays at noon Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. This update brought to you by IBKR and CME Group. The new micro-E-mini futures contracts are available at IBKR at the lowest commissions. Learn more at IBKR.com/CME Mini. And U.S. stock index futures are moving lower this morning alongside European shares as investors turn cautious in the countdown to major central bank meetings and a deadline for fresh U.S. tariffs on Chinese goods. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. Right now, S&P futures are down 10 points. Dow futures are down 103. NASDAQ futures down 34. The DAX in Germany is down 1.3%. 10-year Treasury up 3/32 yield 1.80%. The yield on the 2-year 1.60%. NYMEX crude oil is down 0.6% or 36 cents at $58.66 a barrel. COMEX gold is up 0.4%. It's up $5.90 at $14.70.80 an ounce. The euro 1.1075 against the dollar. The yen 108.57. Saks Fifth Avenue owner Hudson's Bay reporting another weak sales quarter, giving Chairman Richard Baker ammunition for his contested bid to take the retailer private as shareholders prepare to vote next week. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom, John, and Lisa.
Karen, thanks so much. John Farrow and Lisa Abramowitz in New York. I'm Tom Keene in London. Again, a little bit of weight to the tape. -8 now, down to -10 on futures. Dow futures at -106. It is always a joy to speak to Jean-Claude Trichet. There are too many things to talk about, including European central banking. Lisa Abramowitz would like a 3-hour interview. I guess we can't do that today, Lisa, but we will try forward with President Trichet on too many European topics. First, Jean-Claude Trichet, we must speak of the legacy of Paul Volcker. We know of his courage in the late 70s and the early 80s to make tough decisions to force recession and to bring down inflation. But then there was a story afterward, which was almost a steady hand forward through the 1980s. How does Europe find a Volcker-like presence for the next 10 years?
Well, let me say, Tom, how
sad we are to lose Paul Volcker. Until, I would say, his last days, he was still active. He was still very, very keen on giving advice and sentiment. And the last book he published, Keeping Alive, has been absolutely incredible in terms of lessons to be learned from his own life. He said the three verities are stable prices, sound finances, and good government. And he was not pulling his punches to say that on sound finance and good government, practically all advanced economy were not up to the challenges. Stable prices, we are still living in the legacy of Paul as regards stable prices, which gives a measure of his own influence and his own achievement as a central banker.
Can't say enough about the bookkeeping added. Of course, this is Mr. Volcker writing with Bloomberg News' Christine Harper. Great honor to have Christine write that book with Chairman Volcker in his final 2 years of life. Jean-Claude Trichet, the new phrase. I know John Farrow wants to jump in here on it. Let me get the conversation started. How does Jean-Claude Trichet define fiscal space?
Well, I would say a lot of countries have some fiscal space in the advanced economy and should utilize their fiscal space as resolutely as possible with great determination in their interest and in the interest of the continental and global economies. Others are in a totally different situation. And that's all the difficulty with the concept of fiscal space. At the global level as well as at the European level, there is a tendency to oversimplify the recommendation and to say either you should be very sound and reasonable as regards the fiscal position, or you should be as expansive as possible. But it's not correct to oversimplify the recommendation. For a number of countries like Germany and the Netherlands, as examples, the idea that there should be much, I would say, aggressive utilization of fiscal space is absolutely right and goes without saying, in my opinion. For others, it's not the same. And I hesitate on the United States of America to tell you my understanding, because the fiscal position is not signaling a lot of fiscal space in the U.S., at least in my view.
Jean-Claude, let's try and focus on Europe, an area that you had to oversee as the ECB president since 2003. That was the last time that we had a monetary policy review at the ECB. Christine Lagarde is now undertaking that task. What do you think needs to be done?
Well, I think she's right to look at it exactly like the Fed looked at it in the very recent period and still continues, if I'm not misled. So we have a number of issues that are at stake, which are the judgments that you are, I would say, making on non-conventional measures that have been so heavily applied by all central banks in the world. Is it something that you would consider permanent and structural, or is it something which was really transitory, waiting for the economies of the advanced countries going back to normal themselves? You have also the way, how do you run your definition of price stability? The United States Fed looked at it through a certain angle and concluding provisionally, to my knowledge, we don't change the definition of price stability 2%, but we will be more symmetric in utilizing this definition of price stability. So the same questions might be asked in Europe. My own understanding is that the most important one is certainly the definition of price stability and how do you run that. And I would personally, I would say provisionally conclude that a change of the figure would not be appropriate, personally. At the time, I was called myself to go up to 4% instead of 2%. I don't think it would have been a good idea, and today it would appear strange. I don't espouse the idea that 0% or 1% would be better. It seems to me that we should not forget that the central banks are there to anchor medium and long-term expectation. And that being said, it's clear to me that this running of monetary policy with this definition should be symmetric, of course, and I have no hesitation on that. But again, I don't want to anticipate on the meditation of the Governing Council.
For our listeners worldwide, I'm pleased to say that joining us on Bloomberg Radio, Jean-Claude Trichet, the former president of the European Central Bank. Jean-Claude, the former president of the ECB, the one that came after you, Mario Draghi, used to say that for rates to be higher in the future, they needed to be lower now. That's the argument for negative interest rates for much of the last 5 years or so. Do you think we need to reassess that argument?
Well, again, the problem, of course, it is clear that extraordinary accommodating monetary policy, including negative interest rates, like in Switzerland at minus 0.75%, or in Sweden, or in some respect in Japan, all this, of course, is extraordinary and associated with a very, very abnormally low level of inflation and also of growth in the advanced economy. There are, of course, negatives that are associated with this negative interest rates or very accommodating policies, as well as positives. The positives, and I share the view of the major central banks that consider that the positives are higher than the negatives, but the negatives should not be forgotten. And therefore, I hope very much that these very low rates will not be compulsory for eternity, and I hope and I expect that we will go back to a more normal situation. But that being said, it is not an arbitrary decision of the central banks to embark on these accommodating policies. It is because the situation is very demanding.
This has been wonderful, Jean-Claude Trichet. Thank you so much, particularly those thoughts on Paul Volcker this morning. He is the former president of the European Central Bank. John, it's amazing to talk to Mr. Trichet and think of Madame Lagarde coming up. The challenges for Europe, with all these other distractions, the challenges for Europe are just extraordinary.
They're massive. And Tom, you started that interview with Paul Volcker, and I think it's actually interesting to begin and end there. He was a man that faced a very, very different challenge, high inflation, and he took it on aggressively. And there's been a sense that over the last 10 years that many of these central banks have been fighting the last war, and things have changed. And now we need to be aggressively thinking about why they are undershooting their inflation targets, which is why I think these strategic monetary policy reviews that are taking place at the Fed and the ECB are so important.
Although I will say this, that there has been inflation of another sort, and that is asset inflation. Today there were 2 surveys that came out I want to point you to. German manufacturers painting a bleak next year, basically saying that things are uncertain, right? We know that the manufacturers are in a world of hurt. It's going to get worse. That's the readout. But meanwhile, you see German investor confidence increasing and turning the most optimistic since April. So you sort of wonder, how much is this like perverse incentives, right, to go into the wrong things without the economic backing?
That should be part of the conversation at all of these monetary policy reviews. What should they be targeting? Should they doggedly focus on just an inflation target, Tom, or does it need to be a whole lot more broader?
Well, it's gonna be interesting. And to me, as President Trichet said, he talked about symmetric inflation versus an asymmetric approach, something maybe that we'd hear from Olivier Blanchard. This is a fascinating week for economics, finance, investment, and politics. Stay with us. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Market Minute. Stock futures point to a lower Wall Street open. The Fed starts a 2-day rate-setting meeting today, and we're looking back at a lower close on Wall Street yesterday that saw the Dow losing 105 points. U.S. traders are awaiting news on whether Washington will go forward with a planned December 15th tariff hike on imports from China. But Bloomberg reports that a tentative deal has been reached on a revised North American Free Trade Agreement, or NAFTA, between the U.S., Mexico, and Canada. We'll see if investors bite after the online pet supply retailer Chewy issued some guidance and its third quarter sales, which both beat analyst estimates. Bigger paychecks are making economic enthusiasts out of most Americans. A Fannie Mae survey shows that 57% said the economy is on the right track, 21 percentage points above where it was in October 2016, the month before Donald Trump was elected president. Almost 3 in 10 respondents said their household income is significantly higher than it was a year ago. Gina Cervetti, Bloomberg Radio.
No.
You can't be the only one who spends time examining angles,
This sort of mini deal, what would it look like?
considering possibilities,
From a credit perspective, this is good news.
planning for eventualities.
This company really has to get back on a growth track.
You're right. The others are here.
General Electric is such an interesting story.
Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney. Weekday mornings at 10 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Economics.
I think the U.S. is going in for a couple of years of very, very strong growth.
The deficit by early in the next decade will start to become a real problem for the markets.
Finance.
The consumer is really strong right now.
We don't realize how good times are now.
Investment.
The biggest problem that people have in investing in stocks is that they get out of the market.
It's not supposed to be easy. Anyone who finds it easy is stupid.
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrow on Bloomberg Radio.
Good morning, everyone. Futures -9, -10, make it -12. A little bit of erosion here on the tape this morning. Don't oversell it, but there is a weight to the tape. 31.23 on SPX, 27.787 on the Dow, down 115 points. And then we've got in the yield market, well, we're in 1 basis point as well, 1.81%. Tom Keene in London, our studios here next to Mansion House in London, the Royal Exchange off in the distance, Queen Victoria Street, and in New York at Lexington and 59th Street. Lisa Abramowitz and John Farrell as well. Farrell jetting over here later tonight. The red eye, John, you're going to come right to work?
I will be on the red eye straight to work to catch up with you, Tom. I'm sure you'll be well rested after a nice 5-course meal somewhere, I'm sure.
Yeah, Liverpool Street, McDonald's. It'll be great.
Yeah,
I'm really looking forward to that.
The number 2 value meal.
Well, the number 2 value meal, it's not like in Zurich. In Zurich, it costs more. $14 for the number 2 value meal. Here, it's a little more reasonable. We're all fired up about the election. And John, what do you read from New York on the election right now?
So far, I don't think many people are paying attention to it. I think they will come Thursday night when the election starts to come through. How it shapes the Brexit conversation is the crucial question for so many people. Remember that in early September, we had a move all the way down to in and around 120 on sterling, and that got people's attention. We've come back to no man's land. The average on the pound against the US dollar since the UK voted to leave the EU in and around 130, which is exactly where we are right now.
Interesting. And we'll, of course, have full election coverage. John Farrell, Anna Edwards, and Guy Johnson on the green. They'll do that London time, 10 p.m.-ish, which means, if my math is right, 5 p.m. U.S. time. And there can really be some news breaking off of that 10 p.m. Point, that 5 p.m. point, Wall Street time as well. Bloomberg Surveillance this morning brought to you by Cohn Resnick. Transform your tax game. The Cohn Resnick team can help dealmakers develop a winning tax strategy. Visit CohnResnick.com/tax insight. John?
Tom, Kit Duke's joining us now on the phone, SocGen Chief FX Strategist. Kit, great to have you with us. A little bit of a snooze in financial markets going into some key risk events. Your thoughts on that? A couple of days away from the Fed, the ECB, a general election, and a December 15th trade deadline.
Yeah, I think up to a point, the payroll data last Friday sort of quietened markets down because the jury's out on whether the U.S. economy's, recovering, trundling, or slowing. All sides can feel some encouragement. We still don't know. We get random headlines about whether there will or won't be a U.S.-Chinese trade deal, whether import tariffs will or won't be imposed on the 15th. And so we're waiting for some of that, and then we're waiting for the election and all these meetings. So, the market I came in this morning, nothing had moved. It's moved a little bit more since I've been here, but, nothing had moved when I came to work this morning.
It has been really quiet on the China-US front, Kit. What do you read into the silence?
I think both sides, if I had a guess, it would be that neither side wants to turn around and make the situation worse, but they don't have a deal yet, and there's not an enormous incentive to get an all-encompassing deal. In a sense, the Phase 1 deal is an exercise in kind of finding something you can agree on, given that the big deal, something sort of more concrete, is going to be really hard to agree much before the U.S. elections. But neither side, I think, wants neither side wants the economic consequences on the U.S. consumer or on China, for example, of the next round of tariffs, or on the global economy and financial markets and sentiment generally, of everything falling in. So that they'd like to keep talking positivity, but they're struggling to actually get anything down on paper, even modest. So, I mean, maybe they can agree to postpone the next round of import tariffs. You'd have thought so, and get something very modest together, but that's all.
Kit, there is the sort of intangible here of the ongoing negotiations. We don't know whether that'll actually come to some sort of trade resolution, at least in the short term. On the other hand, we are getting economic data, whether it's the German manufacturing figures and the outlook that seems to be deteriorating for 2020, or the UK economy, which unexpectedly stagnated in October, which marked 3 straight months without growth for the first time since 2009. How much are you paying attention to that to sort of influence your trade calls?
Well, I'm almost taking as given the UK economy just is slowing. I mean, who's going to hire? Who's going to invest? What kind of capex can you possibly imagine while we've now spent quite so long going round and round in decreasing circles on this? We need to get resolution in any form so that the UK economy can start sorting itself out. This is horrific. So the only thing I would bet on with confidence for the UK next year is rate cuts, frankly. I mean, Europe, it's more Germany than the rest of it. It's more manufacturing than the rest of it. If you plot a chart of German manufacturing output against Eurozone GDP, you get depressed. That we're not going to get good news until we get global trade rising again in Europe, or unless someone pulls a huge rabbit out of the bag on fiscal policy.
Kit, 2020, it's way too much work for me. You've got 18 trade ideas. Euro Czech, dollar South Africa, long Indonesia, short Australia, and I don't know, India, I guess. Which trade all John and I want to know, so we can afford the next Arsenal victory, is which trade do I affect now out of the 18?
I'm buying the yen against almost everything. It says so at the top of that page. That's my simple starting point. Look, I think bond yields haven't hit their lows. There's no inflation still. We're going to get more easing from the Fed next year. We're going to get more easing from the ECB if they can find out how to do it. We'll get easing from the UK. The Bank of Japan is the one central bank that doesn't really know what it can do to ease monetary policy further. I'm going to get a stronger yen. I'll probably get a stronger Chinese yuan from here as well next year. That's the trade. Or you could just buy 30-year bonds. We could have bought 30-year bonds together in 1982. We'd be rich.
Well, that's true. I mean, Paul Volcker, the late Paul Volcker, was the one that suggested that would be a good strategy. It's maybe away from the FX remit, Kit Jukes, but with bonds, with a terrific 2019, is it a year to just clip a coupon?
Yeah, I think we will see. U.S. yields. The U.S. isn't an island, and I think you're not going to get very far in Europe. Yields can't fall much further. Rates can't fall much further in Europe from here. But I do think there's some convergence to come from the U.S. side of this. I am shocked. I mean, I'm amazed and impressed that American investors, when I talk to them, are so upbeat about the United States. I think the U.S. economy is slowly slowing, and there's no policy in place or on offer this side of the election that's going to turn that around. So I think as it slows, there's not much inflation. There's a magnet that draws Treasury yields towards German bond yields.
What's the dollar call that goes with that, Kit?
Eventually, one day before Arsenal next win the Premiership, the dollar will weaken.
Kit Jukes. Might be a while before that happens.
Maybe quote you on that.
Tom Keane went to his first game yesterday, Kit, to watch West Ham Arsenal.
He didn't tell me he'd gone. Well, I tell you what, the first half was dreadful. So I'm apologizing on behalf of my football team for that. The goals took 9 minutes, and that was the fun for the game. But I was happy by the end.
Did Tom tell you that he was a Spurs fan? Did he leave that bit out too?
Yeah,
I think that's absolutely fine. They have a very good manager, a wonderful new stadium, and they scored tons of goals at the weekend.
Explain, Kit, to our U.S. audience why when I'm in a London cab and I bring up Arsenal, the cab drivers become essentially hysterical. Why is that?
Well, It's a football club that has lost its way for well over a decade now, and is very slowly getting worse, and used to play the fastest, most sort of entertaining football around, and now plays at the speed of a snail, and the fans despairing, and some of them keep on going on and on and on about how expensive the ticket prices are, which, that's not the players' fault. But the mood in the stadium, if I could say one thing, it would be the mood in the stadium is awful at the moment at the home ground and needs to improve.
Yeah. John, extraordinary to me with all this, there's no U.S. equivalent. Maybe Montreal in hockey or Dallas in football, but there's no U.S. equivalent.
What about the Jets?
No, not even.
Not even?
When O'Larian darkens, it's totally go mental on the Jets. Other than that, no.
Hey, Kit, thank you very much. Kit Jukes there, SocGen Chief FX Strategist, and for now at least, an Arsenal Football Club season ticket holder. Got no idea how long that lasts, Tom.
I don't know. They were saying there's a lot of empty seats. It's really an angst thing. I mean, I don't pretend to understand it, but the passion.
Mate, you do a pretty good job of pretending to understand it, Tom.
I'm at home studying this as best I can.
Lisa's refusing to try and pretend to understand it.
I thought maybe she'd left the studio.
No, I'm enjoying the chat.
I'll get the price action. I'll bail you out. Equity futures down 0.4% on the S&P 500. In the bond market, the Treasury story for you this morning. Yields come at a single basis point to 180 on a 2-year or 160. In foreign exchange, a little bit of outperformance from sterling once again. The Swissy is bid. The pound is stronger by 0.2%. Big week ahead, but a bit of a snooze in financial markets ahead of some key risk events. We are 24 hours out from a Fed decision. From New York and London, you are listening to Bloomberg Surveillance on Bloomberg Radio.
For a more in-depth look at London football, we have John Tucker here. John.
Not quite, but close enough. House Democrats poised to unveil 2 articles of impeachment against President Trump. This morning at 9 in Washington, they're expected to put forward one charge against the president of abuse of power and another of obstruction of Congress. Bloomberg Radio will carry that news conference starting at 9 live. President Trump's going to face a more assertive Congress on foreign policy. This will be on full display tomorrow when the Republican-led Senate Foreign Relations Committee considers sanctions on Turkey and Russia. Both countries the president has tried to court. And Australia's Prime Minister says 11 Australians remain unaccounted for. 13 have been hospitalized after that New Zealand volcano eruption. The Prime Minister says 3 Australians are suspected to be among the initial 5 confirmed dead. Australians were the largest group that were exploring White Island when it erupted on Monday. Global News 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm John Tucker. This is Bloomberg.
John Tucker, thank you very much for the energy this morning. From New York, this is Bloomberg.
Startups and research universities like New Jersey Institute of Technology are fueling the innovation economy. And few people are better positioned to see what's on the horizon in New Jersey than physicist and state representative Andrew Zwicker.
How technology is transforming our financial sector is revolutionary, and so much of that is in New Jersey. We are innovators when it comes to agriculture, and there is opportunity now for great transformation in how are we going to grow food in an ever-growing population, and how do we turn urban centers into agricultural centers. Autonomous vehicles is another one where we have some of the world's leading experts, and how this will transform how those who are either elderly or are visually impaired or mobily impaired can start to use autonomous vehicles to transform their lives and have access to transportation they could have never had before.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu/research.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SCI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm
Steve Meyer, President and Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential and change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Ah, Christmas, a time for sharing gifts and laughter, and photos and videos. Make the most of it with a SIM-only deal packed with data from Tesco Mobile. Like a 10-gig SIM for just £13 a month. It's just one of the ways we're celebrating 100 years of great value. Go in store or search Tesco Mobile today. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Ends 29th of December. 12-month contract and unlocked 4G-enabled phone required. Terms apply. See tescomobile.com/terms.
Make their Christmas wishes come true. Whether they love Disney's Frozen 2, want to jet off on Barbie's dream plane, or ready up with the Fortnite Battle Royale collection. At littlewoods.com, you'll find all the toys they love, all with inclusive delivery and free returns. Own Christmas. Shop now at littlewoods.com.
For the independent bookseller who found you that first edition. For the baker who brings the smell of freshly baked breads to your door.
And for the barista who never needs to ask your name.
We've all got a part to play.
Every little tap keeps your high street alive.
And helps your communities thrive.
So if you love where you live, shop small.
Shopping on your local high street can make a big difference. Shop small. Only by American Express.
Right now, instead of hearing this, you could be listening to the music that keeps you moving with TuneIn Premium. Find today's biggest songs and all of your favorites commercial-free. Visit tunein.com/premium to upgrade.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
From Bloomberg Television, here's Taylor Riggs.
It is a bad year for the global TV ad industry. TV ad sales fell almost 4% in 2019. That's the steepest drop since the recession a decade ago, signaling that advertisers are following viewers to the internet. But there are some winners emerging from this market change. Joining us to discuss, Dallas Lawrence, advisor at the marketing technology company Channel Factory in Los Angeles. Dallas, I wonder if we're not surprised the fact that we're migrating